My goal here is to keep a record of how this piece of artwork is coming together. And the first thing I've done is to have, this, I hesitate to call it a frame, but that's actually what it is. It is a frame made from oak. And what I've done for the past couple of days is that I've tried staining it with tea to age it. And I have to admit, I kind of like the result. This is what it looked like originally. It's unfinished. It's meant to be left unfinished because I wanted to have a look of maybe a piece of wood that, or a structure that you might find in a barn, in natural and aged looking. So I think the time I've put into staining this, which was a lot of time, took many coats, probably at least 20 coats of tea to accomplish this. This is the tea that I used to stain the wood. It's an interesting concoction. It's just water and tea. In the end, you're using a non-caustic material that's easy to use, and the cleanup is almost none. Your paintbrush can be laid down overnight and it doesn't stick. It's ready to use the next day. So the next thing is to work on these 5 pieces of pine, create patterns on this pine that will, the patterns will be left up to chance. A formula will be created, and what will happen is I'll put, this is a sample. This is a piece of pine, represents the same wood that I'm going to be using in this piece of art. This is a sample I did some time ago. I wanted to see how the materials interacted with the wood and how easy it was or how difficult it was to paint on it. I've used a number of different art medium on this. It's pastels, oil pastels, chalks, crayons. I think I used some acrylic paints just to see how they react. It's a similar pattern that I may or may not use on this piece, but I just needed to do this to be able to get an idea of how things were going to work out and how things were going to look. And when those pieces of wood are painted to the way I like, I will slide them into the slots. Yep, slide them into the slots. Okay, sorry about that. I had a little technical difficulty getting the wood into the slots, but those 5 pieces of wood will slide into the slots that are in the frame, and what will happen is each one of those 5 pieces of wood will have a different design on it that will be able to be rearranged by taking the wood out of the frame. And the idea is that you can have a painting that can change by the whims of the viewer. So this is all based on an artist named John Cage, who was a famous composer post-World War II, and his work was carried on to his visual arts as well, based on random chance. So this is a lot of represents a lot of the work I I've been doing as well. I like the idea of letting materials dictate what the final image. Just trying to make a record of this so I can actually understand what I'm doing as well, but I think it helps the viewer as well after they see the end piece. So we'll try to keep a visual record of this as I move along. So I've kind of deviated from my original thought. This project, which is based on chance and randomness, excuse me, I've decided to paint on the reverse side of what I've already done yesterday. So what I've done yesterday and planned out for the past few days is 5 panels similar to this, and all these patterns, all these geometrics. There's really not that many. There's triangles, circles, and squares, and I think on one of them there were rectangles. Have all been laid out and done by using chance operations. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip these 5 panels over, and I'm going to prepare the background. And this is not high art by any means, and I'm trying to stay true to John Cage's artwork, with a little twist of my own, of course, on creating something by chance. So let me get started on this. I'll show you the first part of this, so I can get started into the meat and potatoes of this art project. Well, I've got my watercolors, and I want to use watercolors for one reason, is that I really want the watercolor to seep into the grain of the wood. My hopes is that just by putting random color down in particular places on the wood, is that we're really going to keep the integrity of the wood. I want the wood not to be a canvas so much, but I want it to be wood. And the whole idea of this was to have a piece of artwork that could have been found, let's say, in an old barn or something. That's one reason why I use the wood. And I made the frame to kind of simulate what you would find if you went into a wooden structure, or if you found a piece of wood on the side of the road and saw that it was used for something, but over time things started to fade away. And in this case, this is just an old piece of wood. I think this pine was part of an old pallet, and I really didn't know what to do with this wood originally. So my goal here is to use this wood for this art project. I mean, and I'm just putting random sections of pigment down as I go along. And I was thinking yesterday how lucky I am that I really don't have a formal background in painting. So this right here would be one piece of wood completed. do a couple more like this. I'll do one more. The idea of randomness I first discovered several years ago when I lived in Southern California. And I was lucky enough to see John Cage's work at the Los Angeles Museum of Contemporary Art. I believe he was still alive at the time. And what I liked about his artwork was, well, the work that was displayed there was mostly pieces that came about, that came about from his music compositions. And there was actually sheet music that was created to be able to be read as his to play his music. But if you know anything about his music, which was based on randomness, you would discover that even his sheet music was actually very, what's the word I'm looking for? It was not like the normal type of sheet music. And to be able to read it, I don't know how that would have been possible to read. My work requires me to make a formula, and in that formula, I allow, let's say, a deck of cards or dice to determine how the artwork is going to be in its final presentation, where I basically give up all of my rights to creativity as the pigment hits the paper, or how design, the design qualities of what the artwork actually ends up to be. I have given that responsibility to chance, and the chance is determined by how the dice have fallen, or how the deck of cards has turned up numbers or colors or shapes or patterns. So I was saying a couple minutes ago that I consider myself lucky that I do not have a painting background. I went to school, studied photography, and of course when you go to college in an art program, you learn art history, and you learn about different artists' work, and you kind of develop a working philosophy, I guess is the right word. Artwork actually represents ideas, not so much techniques, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the idea that, I am not going to be the great Rembrandt. What I really enjoy, and like when I'm creating, I'm the happiest when something new comes up out of what I'm doing. And yesterday, I have to admit, I was full of myself. The simplicity of this project amazes me. And to the uneducated eye, or maybe even to the educated eye, there's really not much happening with this painting. other than the fact that it's put together by an idea. And the idea is what rules, not so much me. The one thing I wasn't sure about was the original sides of the wood that I painted on yesterday was a very different color than what the back of the wood is that I'm painting on today. And there's some inconsistency. With the other side, there's a lot of consistency in the overall color. So that kind of concerns me a bit. But I like the idea of the possibility that painting on both sides of the wood, there's five slots of wood, painting on both sides increases the possibility like twofold on how the thing is going to be put together on the viewing side. So I don't know how many different ways this thing can be constructed. I'm not really good at math, but you know, here's the way it comes down: is I have 5 pieces of wood that can be put into the frame. Many ways. They can be put in upside down. They can be moved from top to bottom. They can be staggered. There's all kinds of ways this is going to be able to be viewed, and it's going to be up to whoever sits with this painting for the rest of their life on how it's going to be viewed. And if they don't like it one day, they can rearrange it the next day. They can take the wood out of the frame and flip it over and rearrange it and have a new painting there, you know, whenever they want. So it will be all by chance. Okay, so I'm going to let these dry. Okay, so as they dry, I just laid them out, laying on top of each other, kind of in the way that they would be in the frame. But so you can get an idea what I'm talking about is, like, we can take these out of the frame, just like so, and make different arrangements of them. And we'll get a different painting. I actually kind of like the way this looks. So I have a very simplistic idea of what art should look like, and I really think art should have a very human quality. And I'm hoping that the final piece of artwork will have a human quality, and hopefully it will have a sense of music to it when you look at it, that there'll be some kind of rhythm. I'd like to think of my artwork as not only visual, but a way to see music, or a visual music, I guess, would be the best way to explain it. So I'm going to let these dry, and I'm going to go on to the next step and try to... The next part of the project, I did this before I even started putting paint on the wood, is to take a deck of cards, and I use cards I've used cards for the other projects I've used. They made things a little simpler, but this time around I actually drew shapes that I wanted to represent on the board. So I drew shapes on the cards: circles, dots, more circles, upside down triangles. Gee, I don't think I use this one at all, but this is a rectangle with dots in it. Blank cards are blank spaces, and I'll explain that in the next step. So I put equal amounts of those in the deck of cards. And after that, I put them all together as if they were a real deck of cards. Okay, after the cards are set up, I make sure I shuffle them, but more importantly, I have to make a list. Like this list. This is the list I made for this project. I hope you can read it. It's not really much, but it's a guide for me to be able to understand what the symbols of the cards mean. Example, black card, black lines. Red card, white lines. Upside down triangle, right side up triangle, picture card blank. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but that gives you the idea. So I refer. Okay, so the next part of this is to get the boards in a place where I don't want to say organized, but easy to get to. And then we want to make a grid so we know where to place the symbols. So what I did was I measured off the top of the frame. This was the easiest way to do this, was measure off the top of the frame, and they're approximately 3-inch segments that would run down. If I put this here and line it up like that, which is not really straight, but each one of these grids use the boards for the horizontal, and the edge of the blue tape is the edge of the vertical line that goes down the length of the piece. Okay, so you can see I'm working in this area that's not visible, but the tape actually shows me an idea where the boundary lines are. And really nothing has to be exact here. If you measure those pieces of tape, they're not exactly 3 inches. And when I do put pigment down and put color down, I might be overlapping in an area, getting into another area, but it's an approximate location that helps me locate an area to be able to put my geometric designs down. So now we want to shuffle the cards. I don't know if this is visible or not. We're just trying it out. They've been mixed up pretty much because I've used them. Shuffle them, and I'll do a little more off camera. So this is the fun part. This is when we draw the cards and determine what's going on the boards. So let's start it. Okay, so this is a rectangle with dots in it, and it would be black. So that we go into this location right here. Go into this location. I'm going to draw a triangle. Excuse me, a rectangle. And I'm going to put dots in it. There's no right number or wrong number. It's actually the way I feel. And, I really like what I'm using is oil pastels. These are oil pastels. And I like it because they don't leave a solid line on the wood. It's very crude. Crudeness is part of my work. I like things to be natural and not perfect. So, staying true to form, this is going to be that way. If I didn't know what that card was, if I didn't understand those symbols, I would come over here and I would
I would see it on my sheet of paper here that I've set aside. But I have a pretty good feel for what's going on. So now we're going to be working in this area. I'm going to draw a card, and it's a jack. And I know by going to my I like to call it my menu, that the menu says that that's a blank area. So I'm going to leave this area from here to here blank, and we'll move over to the next area. Okay, this will be a black triangle. Black triangle goes right here. Next card is a blank. This area is going to be blank. We're going to move over to this area. My gosh, it's a black square. Okay, so we're going to put the black square in. Next card is a black upside down triangle, and it's going to go right here. Now we can see the interaction between the lines I just put in into the background colors that I put. Okay? You can see that there's an interaction between the geometric shapes and the non-discriminate shapes that I put in. And that's a matter of chance. This is chance as well. The cards determined what geometric shapes I'm going to put in. So I got two layers of chance going on. And we're going to continue on here. I'm going to get these out of the way. So draw another card, and I got a black circle. And actually it's a red circle, and I have to find my red. No, it's a white circle. Excuse me. And it's solid. So we come down to the next board, and we're going to put a solid white circle. Draw another card. It's going to be a red rectangle. Here we are outside with the finished piece. I went in and I finished painting the last two boards, putting the geometric shapes on the last two boards, and then I fixed the oil pastels so they don't have a tendency to, so they won't actually powder off and fall off. So they're fixed pretty well. I don't think they will disappear anytime soon unless someone takes some sandpaper to them and starts scraping them off. So what I did was, after I finished that, I brought it outside and I took my acrylic paints, and you're not going to be able to really see this at all, but I took my acrylic paints, all the watercolor paint that I laid down first. I went and I highlighted some parts of those colors with acrylic, the same acrylic color. So in other words, if I went in here with some white acrylic paint, and I went into some of the blacks, and I went into some of the oranges, all the colors that were originally represented in the first operation of this. I went in and I emphasized, I highlighted parts of it. I totally expect that some of these colors are going to fade and maybe even disappear over time. And to be honest with you, I am 100% okay with that. I like the idea of things changing, and that includes paintings, my paintings. They're not meant to be permanent. I'd like them to be around as long as possible, but just like me making mistakes, I would love to see time work its wonders with this and see what happens to the overall look of the painting after time pays its toll on the painting. So this is the first example of what the painting looks like when I reassembled the boards into the frame after I did that work. So next I think I want to show you some of the work I've done in the past so you can get an idea of what you can do with this whole idea of letting chance create a piece of artwork. I did this piece several years ago, and it was my first painting or piece of art that I did using chance and setting up formulas for how it's going to look. These black and white squares, rectangles, or whatever we want to call them, are actually 35mm slide casings, and they have glass. They have a glass insert, so you can actually protect the slide as you're viewing it. If I remember correctly, what I did was originally is I did a collage, and then I gridded the collage off, and then using cards and dice I put yellow paint down over the collage, and that was a complicated process of rolling dice and figuring out where it was going to go, blah blah blah. And then it came time for me to do the slides, you know, either having a horizontal view like this would be or a vertical view like this. I made a formula that would either pick a black slide or a white slide, you know, the plastic part, and then what side I was going to present it on, either the vertical side or a horizontal side. You know, it's complicated, but making a roll of dice or whatever would determine if it was going to be black or if it was going to be white, if it was going to be a vertical or a horizontal window. On the back side of that, I adhered what I call the roadmap to this painting, and in a very rough way I kind of try to explain the process in the steps. I kind of liked this. I kind of like to make a piece of, I originally wanted to make a piece of artwork just out of this, but I thought it would be more appropriate to put it on the back of the painting. But this is a rough roadmap, a rough instruction book that I followed to create what is on the front side of this painting. Another painting I did using a similar operation as the last painting I showed you. This one started out with a bunch of black squares on illustration board, which was glued to a canvas. And then I formed a formula. That would determine if there were going to be dots or squares or blank spots or red squares or circles. This one took a while to do, and the hard part is to create the formulas, because in your mind's eye you know what the painting wants to do, although you really don't know what it's going to do because everything is left up to chance. So the longer the time that you spend creating a formula will determine how good your painting is going to end up. This painting's title is In Pharaoh's Den, because it kind of ended up looking like hieroglyphics to me. It also looks like code or other things. So because it looked like code, I went on to this painting. This painting's title is What Hath God Wrought? It is the first telegraphed phrase that was sent over the telegraph that was invented by Samuel Morse, who, by the way, was a painter as well as an inventor. My goal with this painting was to use a series of dots, as you can see here. And a little formula was made up where I could use dots and spaces between the dots as a part of the design. What really inspired that is the first layer of this painting were video game tickets won in a game room that was collaged onto the canvas, and you can see the little dots that were formed by the tickets when I attached them collage-wise on to the canvas. So one of the first things I did here was I made that formula to use these dots. And of course, a lot of them have been obscured by the layers of paint that I've put over them since they were first laid down. What interested me when making this painting was I was using dots and spaces. So I thought it would be a great idea to use the Morse code to embed a message into the painting. The title, What Hath God Wrought, as I said before, was the first message that Morse used in his first message on the telegraph. It's a quote out of the Bible. Now, I wasn't so much interested in the quote in the Bible, but I thought a nice response to the message would be the word love. So this is the word love written using the Morse code. Very few people know anything about that. And when they look at the painting, all they do is see these unperfect circles and unperfect rectangles, but that's okay. So there are three examples that I've used in the past on the idea of painting using chance and creating formulas to make that idea of chance make a painting that's pleasing to the eye.
All the roads you travel from